The great Yachting International Radio here today. So this session will be up on YouTube at some point and on our website. So we hope if you miss anything, you can go back and watch it. I'd also like just to thank our education committee for putting this together for everybody today. So I want to pass the microphone over to our co-chair, Barrett Wright and Pete Southgate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, my name is Pete Southgate, co-chair of the ISS Education Committee and Technical Committee for my students. So we wanted to put this session on. This is intended to be a session on risk mitigation, but this is one of the leadership series, and the idea is this will be part one, and then hopefully we'll get some outputs from today, and we hope to do a part two. So Barrett, did you just want to introduce yourself?
I'm Barrett Wright with Hill Robinson. We got every name in the book. We again looking at risk and how it appears that there are more fires and more accidents and things like that. We did think that it was a very pertinent subject for most of the people in here. So we did put together a panel based on a legal side, safety management side, captain's perspective, insurance, and obviously class and flag. So I think it's a really dynamic group, and we'll be providing some scenarios and walking through all of that, but we hope for a lot of audience participation. And then finally, we'll close out this with Michael Moore sort of leading the end and giving us a good wrap-up. So I think it'll be good. And Rick Thomas, here you go.
Rick, just to let everybody know that this is being filmed.
Yeah, we are going to turn this into hopefully a legacy piece for the ISS. It's going to go up on their YouTube channel as a full episode, and we're also producing this as a special episode of Yachting USA through the Yachting International Radio Network. So there'll be a couple 100,000 people watching this eventually.
Excellent. And for those who don't know, this is Rick Thomas, who is president of Yachting USA and Yachting International Radio.
Thank you.
And without further ado, Rick, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, what I would like to do is introduce our panelists. We'll start from right to left so they can tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do, and ideally how risk mitigation factors into their world. That gives you a little insight so that when we start talking about these scenarios, we deliver a product that you guys can walk out of this room with that actually has some meaning. So let's start all the way to the right there. Lou, you'd like to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lou Montello. I'm an attorney at Montello Law. A significant part of my practice is dedicated to maritime matters. I got into this business because I was ops boss and navigator on a Coast Guard cutter in Miami Beach back in 1980, drove a 175-footer. And as an attorney, risk mitigation is a huge part of what we do, whether it's the client coming in and buying a yacht for the first time or operating the vessel afterwards and then dealing with issues that arise as part of their ownership of the yacht.
My name is Ken Bracewell. I was born into a maritime family in the commercial maritime business. Subsequently, after university, I joined the yachting industry, and I've been a captain in the yachting industry for 30 years. Circumnavigated a couple of times and have taken my fair share of risks.
We just brokered the sale of the yacht for Rilda, so he's buying drinks later today.
All right. Good job. All right. Pete, you want to go?
Oh, no, go ahead. Start. I'll be the last.
Oh, yeah. Is it? Can everybody hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
Hit the mic.
Okay, yeah, so, my name is Pete Southgate. I'm Regional Director Americas for the Maritime Authority of the Cayman Islands. I've been in the yachting business for far too long. But I started off as a shipbuilder and then worked as a class surveyor before entering into the world of flag. And I've been involved in flag now for over 25 years. Obviously, risk is something that I deal with on a daily basis with the primary goal of hopefully
mitigating and keeping people safe. So that's really why I'm here today, and I look forward to interesting discussion. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Egil Nordstrom. I'm from Hill Robinson, head of fleet compliance. In a nutshell, I'm responsible for the implementation of the safety management across the fleet. So with that in hand, a lot of risk mitigation every day, not when I'm crossing the street, obviously, but I'm here to engage in conversation about ship-to-shore communication, getting the mentality right and the safety culture correct on board and as well within the organization.
Hello, I'm Rob Karen. I'm coming from the insurance perspective. My background includes about 20 years in super yacht insurance and about 22 in just insurance in general. And the way that I look risk is somewhat similar to what everybody does here, but instead, as a broker, an insurance broker, I work for the client. And my job is to really transfer their risk to the insurance companies. So that's I'm interested and happy to participate in this, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
This feels like Yacht Anonymous. Hello, my name is... Here we go again.
There you go.
All right. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Engel de Boer. I work for Lloyd's Register. I'm responsible for the segment globally. Been with LR for 28 years. Prior to that, spent quite a number of my years at the IMO, representing ship owners, and as a loss adjuster prior to that. Don't know whether I really need to explain what Lloyd's does, but we're definitely into risk mitigation when it comes to safety and quality. Today, my main focus will be on crew safety culture. So not the technical aspects, actually. I think there's a lot more to be gained on that side of the spectrum.
My name's Michael Moore. I'm a maritime lawyer. I think my job here today, and I've been a maritime lawyer for quite a while, started out in New York by way of Saudi Arabia, started in Miami with Holland and Knight in 1980, and the firm of Moore & Co. was founded in 2004, and we specialize in maritime law. So the job that I have here today, so you kind of get the drift of what's happening, is that we have leaders in the 6 disciplines that probably most affect risk management overall in the yacht world. They're all recognized experts. Some of them have even testified on our behalf or as paid consultants. I mean, experts, hired we use experts, of course. But they're experts in insurance, legal, they're the management of yachts, the operations of yachts, the class representatives here to talk about safety in yachts and a new initiative, I think, having to do with crew. And finally, of course, the flag. So all of those groups are the groups that kind of segmentedly are all important. So as an attorney, we look at all of those aspects of situations that come to our door to try to figure out, what is the best, solution for the client's problem. So I'll do the wrap up today.
Thank you, Michael. Rick Thomas, and some might ask what brings me here other than to record this, and I talk about risk mitigation, and I'll give you just a quick background as to why risk mitigation fits in my space pretty nicely. I started my maritime career in 1980, working offshore Louisiana and Texas in the offshore oil industry, risky business offshore. I was a commercial diver offshore, really risky business. I was a saturation and bell bounce diver offshore. It doesn't get more risky than that. And this was in 1980, so we're working with 1970s technology. So I came out of that space, and I started a little company called Nautical Structures 37 years ago, and we manufactured arguably the most risk-prone equipment you would put on a yacht. Cranes, hydraulic watertight doors, gangways, tender handling systems, 100 different ways to hurt or kill yourself. So a lot of risk in there. We worked very closely with these gentlemen over here with Lloyd's and Class, Flag. Peter and I worked a lot on safety and testing protocols and such in designing equipment. Recreationally, I'm known, for those who know me well, as an avid deep technical diver. I do a lot of trimix diving and wrecks, and I love going 4,000 feet back in a cave. So risk mitigation, human factors are, I'm still here on this planet too. So I think what I bring to the table is the human factor and is the proper approach to any risk type of activity that we do, and yachting is full of it. And I hope you all walk out of here today with some additional understanding as to what it really is to be in this yachting industry and what we all do to mitigate the risks and make it a better environment for the people that are working within the industry. And with that said, let's start with Lloyd's here today. I'm going to talk about your program.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, if I got it right, the idea is today that we will start talking about different scenarios, and on the basis of that scenario, we will try to make sure that there is interaction with the panel, but also with the audience, to get your feedback on certain matters. So, together with Rob next to me, we have developed a scenario whereby, not too unrealistically, there is a lithium-ion battery fire on board of a yacht. This particular yacht is in a marina, and as you can imagine, actually extinguishing lithium-ion battery fires is extremely difficult. And despite the very valuable efforts of the crew on board, they were unable to extinguish the fire. In fact, in the process of trying to extinguish the fire, there were some minor injuries. And the vessel itself was a total loss. So that is the A scenario. Anything I need to add to that?
Sure. Just the other part to add in there is that over the course of the investigation of the fire, it was determined that the device being charged was left unsupervised and was using a improper charging apparatus.
Let me jump in real quick. Everything we're going to talk about today is hypothetical. We are not going to bring into the conversation real-world experiences. Please, when we get to the participation part of this, we all will probably recognize some of these things. Let's do our best not to name names. We're not here to shame or to put anything out on the table that's actual. So let's leave it hypothetical. It works that way.
To put it in a nutshell, I think this particular scenario depicts any sort of incident which could happen. It might be topical because there are a great number or an increasing number of lithium-ion fired batteries on board of yachts, unfortunately. But it does show that there is a very close interlink between sort of the human reaction to difficult and strenuous situations and the equipment on board or the technology which is available on board. And what we're seeing over the last X amount of years is that as a consequence of incidents and accidents happening, the regulators, flag and classification societies, tend to introduce more technical requirements. And as if there aren't already enough requirements being imposed on particularly the crew and the operators of the yachts, if we're not careful, we are going to get even more technical regulations addressing whatever it might be, in this case, a lithium fire. I don't think that adding additional technical regulations will have the same impact as having a more thorough investigation into the safety culture on board of yachts, or I would say the safety culture in this particular industry. I mean, Rick, you've worked in other industries, and particularly the offshore industry. You know how rigorously they are now being regulated in terms of fire and safety, but there is a very strenuous safety culture mentality in that particular industry. And frankly speaking, without being disrespectful to this industry, it is not at that same level yet, and there is a huge need to improve that. But in order to do that, we need to understand where we are at within this industry. And therefore, frankly speaking, I was quite fed up that every single time we were in a conference and we're talking about incidents and accidents, and then people start pinpointing blame, particularly at the crew, that it is always their doings that will have resulted in that particular failure or incident or accident. Whereas usually if you go into the investigations of incidents and accidents, you will find there is a lot more complicated than just blaming the crew. The fact that there is this blaming culture annoys me terribly. And that there shouldn't be a blaming culture. We should be moving on to a safety culture whereby we're all willing to move forward and to make sure that these incidents and accidents don't happen anymore. So, as a consequence of the numerous discussions we had during the numerous conferences about the incidents and accidents which have happened, unfortunately some of them quite in the public domain as well, which is very detrimental to our industry, we as Lloyd's decided to launch a yacht safety culture and crew well-being survey. It will be launched in April. We're going to spread it out throughout the industry. I encourage you to participate in this particular survey. We are an independent authority. We are a technical organization. Our motto is life matters. We mainly deal with technical regulations. We don't deal with crew. We do have a team of experts who deal with the human side of the integration of technology onto ships, and we've done these type of surveys in other segments as well, and other industries, maritime industries as well. So by collecting this data, and it's completely anonymous, and it's quite a thorough survey, so it does take a little bit of time to complete, we will gather that data, provide a report, and hopefully we will have finally within this industry, because it's simply not there, have a benchmark of safety against which we can work and we can move forward. And I think that, to me, is the most important aspect to embark upon as an industry, whereby we can also address issues like lithium-ion fire batteries on board of yachts and marinas being damaged and crew members being injured.
Engel, let me ask you something in context of what you just shared with us. Training, crew training, facilities training, how does that, in your view, factor into both the losses and hazards as well as solutions?
I think it's a self-explanatory question, really. I mean, I think yes, there is, of course, a need to also address the way we deal with crew training, not just at the initial stages when they want to enter the industry. A 5-day the basic STCW training course just doesn't do it. It is not adequate enough, to be honest. And there needs to be a continuous process of improvement throughout a potential career of anybody who wants to work in the industry. So that definitely needs to be augmented in terms of capabilities, in terms of locations, and in terms of programs. Programs organized by some of the management companies also present here in this room are very good in organizing these type of training programs for crew, not just in terms of safety, but also in terms of well-being. Excellent. Let's spread it to the industry, and there needs to be more of it.
So one of the pushbacks, one of the issues that sometimes gets put on the table when you start talking about this, look at other industries, whether it's aviation, offshore, high-risk industries where safety is paramount. There are recertification requirements, there are retesting requirements, there are hours of courses that have to be taken annually and biannually, and of course that all leads to hopefully a reduced failure situation. We've pushed back against that. Owners don't want to spend the money. I think there's a desire not to have too much legislation or too much just oversight of our industry. And if we're going to stay that way, how do we self-police that, or how do we fix that?
I think we're doing that right now. I think that's what this series is about.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention one thing. So in our previous, there was a forum previous to this, the Mare Forum, and one of the things that we were discussing, and this is towards you, Rob, again, how detailed an insurance investigation goes. It's looking at the safety management system. It's going deeper to, risk assessments, into checklists and things like that. How deep do you go in this particular instance with a lithium, battery fire? How would you start the process?
Well, just to clarify, the insurance company, whichever of the ones handling the case, would assign a surveyor to go and inspect the damages if they're inspectable. In a lot of cases, from what I understand when preparing for this, is that with these fires, they burn so hot that it's hard to tell, where they originated from. And in this hypothetical, I said that it was a faulty or poorly charged apparatus, but it could, it could be impossible to find out in some cases. So it really come down to the survey following the issue, and then from there, digging into the systems, the procedures that were in place, whether or not that particular insurance policy had a certain clause that addressed lithium-ion battery storage, because you do see that in some policies. So it's all, you have to start from the cause, the source, and dig from there until you come up with an answer.
Rob, would you like to continue with your scenario and your input now?
Of course, yeah. So some other items. I know that Ingle mentioned crew and training a crew and things of that nature, and also preparing for this, I spoke with several people, and it seems to be a common agreement that a lot of times when owners are on board, they want to use the toys right away, and to prepare for that, the crew members have them completely charged right there. Ready to go at a moment's notice, instead of instituting some sort of procedure in place on board to where you need to wait a little while until the product or toy or whatever it is charges. I know that's kind of hard to say. You can't really put limitations on owners, but that's one issue that has come up in our discussions. Other items include fighting these fires and having the appropriate PPE available to move the smoldering object. I know that Wendy has that kit that she brought over here that hopefully we'll get to see, and being prepared with one of those kits, those fire suppression kits.
I think one of the problems with people are scared of lithium-ion, and I can understand all the hype about it, but it seems to me that one of the biggest failures, or the failure rates, are with low-quality manufactured items, improper charging equipment, and unattended charging. And those things can be mitigated. If the boss brings a cheapo toy that his kids found, at a trade show, it's okay to say, we're not going to have that on the boat. So you want to have good quality. CBOB is an example, right? CBOB is a nicely manufactured product. You can't take the battery out for charging. It's integral to the CBOB. So we have CBOBs on board, and before we bought them, I discussed with our insurance company the plan. We've got a sprinkler head over top, which isn't going to put out a lithium-ion fire, but it'll stop the heat. Somebody has to be on scene. The charger is not plugged in unless there's somebody in that compartment with the charger. And we use the OEM manufacturer's chargers. As such, I'm fairly confident we're not going to have a problem. Am I guaranteeing that? No, but I think the risk is low.
Really happy to hear you say that, because you hear so often these fires happen unattended. There's no fire watch. There's no procedures or policies as to how these things are done. I think a well-run boat has that, written policies and procedures, and you don't charge without a watch on board. You don't charge overnight. You charge.
Not on board, on scene.
Scene, yeah.
Paramount that when you deal with lithium-ion batteries, or in fact any tool or toy or piece of equipment, whether it's hydraulics, which you mentioned before, that which imposes a certain risk, there is a need to do a risk assessment, because that's exactly what you've done. You've actually carried out a risk assessment of the potential issues which could happen with this particular piece of equipment, toy, which was bought by the owner, being brought on board. And even if you know that the supplier of that particular equipment is unknown and perhaps not trustworthy, you can still have mitigation measures in place, which you've, by the sounds of it, you've done adequately to make sure that the risks are minimized. And push comes to shove, lithium-ion battery fires, you simply cannot extinguish them. the thermal runaway and the heat, which is it releases, it really is literally impossible to extinguish. So the best thing to do is to throw the damn thing overboard. Well, no, actually, what you should do first, bring your flag state, see if you're permitted to pollute the environment, then get the probe, right? Okay, no, I'm only joking. But I mean, the best thing to do is to throw overboard or dump it in some water. And I know, and apparently we will see some battery cases nowadays being promoted. I fully support any sort of mitigation being put in place. However, boxes like this or detection systems, which I have seen in operation, still need to be certified in order to give you some sort of guarantee. Because if you're basing yourself on a guarantee which you're not sure about, and an incident would still happen, the insurance company is going to come around and say, I'm sorry, your ship and your crew is not insured. So be very careful with what you eventually do want to use on board is my advice, and carry out a risk assessment. There's guidelines available. The Cayman Islands wrote some really good marine technical notice. We wrote extensive guidelines on the use of lithium-ion batteries, owner-supplied lithium-ion batteries on board of yachts, but it all boils down to the risk assessments.
Could you kind of jump in from the insurance perspective on this and talk to us about how underwriters and insurance organizations can help influence these types of risk mitigation, these policies and procedures we carry on board?
Sure. I mentioned it just briefly earlier, but one step that's been taken is insurers have come together as a group and adopted a lithium-ion battery clause, which provides essentially guidelines on how to properly store, use, charge, and extinguish these fires when they occur. Not all of that clause has not been adopted by everybody, and I don't know if I'm a fan of it being adopted by everybody, but I think what it does is it serves as a guideline on how to properly manage these items and to refer to when you're assessing the risk of having lithium-ion battery powered toys and things of that nature on board. Other items could include from the insurance companies. A lot of times an insurer will require a risk management survey to be performed by a surveyor, most oftentimes at their own expense. And what that does is the surveyor goes on and interviews the crew. They take a look at all the systems in place by the management company. And at that point, they could also identify if there's some areas of exposure there in terms of poor storage or using the improper batteries.
If I may jump in, I think we often very much focus on the most evident equipment. We most focus on the sea-bobs, all the various different, or the flight boards. But I think one risk element to take into consider, in particular, is the small electronic devices. It's using a non-approved iPhone charger in the crew cabin under the pillow. I mean, there was not so long ago a complete loss of a bridge on a container ship calling U.S. waters in the Gulf of America, so-called referred to now, and that was just a radio, and it was actually on charge in the bridge. Complete total loss, lithium-ion battery, and it goes quick. So I think risk management, risk assessment approach, yes, but at the end of the day, it's to get the crew on board to understand it, because all of that is all about liabilities, particularly this man from insurance, right? Liabilities. But we got to get it right on board. We got to get the mentality and the training and the awareness, particularly with the risk with lithium. It's the risk awareness item. And often I come on board and I do my crew cabin inspection as part of an internal audit, and I see, that Chinese charger charging that thing on that crew member's, bed. So I think we have a long way, and we shouldn't just focus on the most evident items, because those are often not the ones that are going to actually go into a thermal runway.
I think it comes down to, again, though, that you want to use an OEM charger, no matter what the piece of equipment is. I know that's not all. For example, the Apple chargers are okay. The Belkin chargers, if you can buy it at the Apple store, it's a good charger. And so we need to teach the crew, and I always try to drill this into them, to use good common sense. You don't buy your charger at the convenience store. You buy your charger at an electronics store.
Now, we're really micro here with the lithium, and that's important because that is certainly a foundational resource or source of ignition on these boats. But let's step back a little, go macro, in that fire is arguably the biggest hazard, or one of the biggest hazards we have when we're offshore or we're at the dock. We've recently heard about fires that have taken out shipyard sheds and boats sitting next to other boats. And so, from a captain's perspective, Ken, and we can also go over to maybe you, Pete, what do we do different or better to put together policies and procedures to mitigate or deal with those risks when fire begins on one boat? How do we contain it, or how do we try to protect for greater losses?
Well, I think your goal is to never have to try that scenario. So vigilance, observation, paying attention, teach the watch keepers.
Maintaining watches.
Yeah, teach the watch keepers what to be looking for. That's my goal. Shipyards, I'll often tell the crew, if you're in the shipyard and you have a fire, you put a fire extinguisher on it, you put out the alarm, then you get off the boat. We're not there to fight fires on the boat. We're trained to fight fires at sea. We're not firefighters. We'll put a coolant. We'll get off the boat, put cooling on to try to maintain it or contain it, but not to be in there in the space fighting the fire.
I think. Sorry, am I on? Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes down to, from a flag state perspective, we're looking at passive systems to prevent fire propagation. Fires are going to happen. And just to put it in perspective, the vast majority of fires that occur on ships are not lithium-ion related. And in fact, we've come a long way since the original lithium-ion batteries. We've now got containment systems and proper UL certified, even to some extent, some fire extinguishing systems that are coming on stream. So we've come a long way there. But the vast majority of fires are not lithium-ion battery related. But from a flag state, we're looking at passive system. Having a passive system such as structural fire protection is the key. So if you have a fire in a space, it's contained. If you have a lithium-ion battery, in the new code, we've just put a requirement for the garage space, which is where most of these toys are enclosed, to be provided with structural fire protection. Up to this version of the code, that was never a requirement. These are typical petrol storage areas that have jet skis and jerry cans for petrol. But in the 27 years or so that I've been involved in, 27 years that I've been involved in regulation, we don't have fires in garage spaces as a result of petrol. We have fires in garage spaces as a result of lithium-ion batteries. So I think containment is key. So having a passive system, so structural fire protection, is always something that we would encourage. And then limitation on materials. You want materials that are not going to go up like a firework, or go up like in a puff of smoke and propagate the fire. So that's another area that we look at very closely. Procedures are one thing, but fires are always going to happen. So anything that can protect you from that is beneficial. But one of the best defenses against fire, and this is reflected in the new code, is having a fixed fire suppression system throughout the boat. So that would be typically a sprinkler system or a water mist system. That has proven to be the most effective in knocking out a fire before it takes hold and causing, making the fire a lot worse than it was in the first place. So I think those are the key points that we would, from a flag state perspective, we would encourage: protection, restriction on materials, containment, and active suppression systems have proven to be. And procedures, don't get me wrong, the value of procedures is very much there. But if you start with these active and passive systems, then the procedures are there to supplement that, and you're not, if you miss something, then it's not catastrophic.
That's the idea. You catch it before it gets too big, or prevent it altogether. Igor, we're going to go back to you. You have case study based on routine maintenance and procedures, the inherent risks. I think, when you get into that, there's something that I talk about a lot in my risk mitigation training, human factors. I call it deviation of normalcy. I don't know how many people in this room are familiar with that concept, but the whole idea there is you set a standard, a procedure. It's all agreed that's a great way to go, and you follow that for a while. And then circumstances come along and you push it a little bit. You take it one step further because you time crunch or money or whatever, and it worked. And so you keep doing it that way. And after a while, that becomes your new normal procedure, and then that gets pushed a little bit. And then one day you have a huge failure, and you do the analysis and try to figure out why, and you realize you're 2, 3, or 4 steps away from the original established protocol. That happens in every industry. It's really common. That is a human factor. So when you get into this conversation about routine maintenance and procedures, I'd love to kind of incorporate the human factor into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly in my role, and I think anyone who's doing have some kind of role within a safety management company of writing procedures, you can write any procedure, but often when it comes down to it, it's with the failure is they're just not followed. The procedures are not followed. They do something else. They deviate exactly from it. So the case study that I wanted to discuss in this room was basically, we on board the vessels, they're doing a lot of things every single day. Whether they are doing an electrical isolation or they are doing a tender lifting operation, they're doing something every day on board, okay? And you can do that operation 50 times, but it's on the 51st time that someone gets the leg cut off, okay? And the case that the hypothetical case that I'm presenting, basically was an engineering officer on board. In this case, he had discussed the work that he was going to do. He was going to replace a solenoid valve on board. Okay, very straightforward on the freshwater treatment system. Okay, he had discussed the work the day before with the chief engineer. They were both rotating, 12-hour shift, 24-hour operation, vessel at anchor. And he was deemed a low risk. He had been on board for 7 to 10 years. He basically knew his stuff, and he had done the same thing 50 times over before. Low risk. At this time, he thought he had isolated the system that he was working on, so he had flicked the brake on the 440 switchboard. But unfortunately, the equipment that he was replacing while connecting it was actually connected to a different power source. Okay, so he put his finger in the wrong place, straight through, electrocuted through the index finger, and very near close fatality. Okay, and it brings to mind another just similar case, but it's this thing, you're doing this 50 times over, but at that time you think it's a low risk thing, you don't follow the procedure, you certainly don't do the permit to work system, the safeguarding, safe working practice actually proven to save the thing. You cut a little bit of corner, you think, I can just do this, all right, we can just launch this tender now. Let's not just do the toolbox talk, just get it done, The pressure is up, the client is waiting, whatever it is. But it's those deviations, and they happen every day on board. And there's so many inherent risks with them. So my approach to this is actually sometimes, particularly from a regulatory or sometimes with the safety management as well, I think we're overcomplicating things. And my ethos in anything with writing procedure, if Bill the deckhand can understand it, then we've done a pretty good damn job, because if Bill the deckhand can understand it, the people above him can also understand it. And I think I often go with the ethos, KISS, keep it stupid, simple, seafarer. And I often, when I'm reviewing perceived as being approached by the onboard team, or whether you're actually trying to read some of Peter's whatever regulatory framework, you're tearing your hair out because what are they trying to gain at? And I think sometimes we're often a little bit too focused on the liabilities and not getting clear and concise instructions on board that the team on board can run with. So, because that's the easiest way to control the risk, to mitigate the risks.
Factor side of this.
I think it comes back to Engel's point too, from another dialogue on being proactive versus reactive. And I think you had mentioned a couple of times beforehand that the industry seems very reactive, and we really got to rethink, how we're looking at it to prevent things from going forward. So, again, working with Class Flag, we get fleet guidelines that we sent out to our fleet, whenever there is an incident, so somebody else can learn from it. And then obviously fleet notices coming from each of the flag states. So, I guess the question comes to sort of everybody here. How are we going to change that? What do we need to do to sort of reverse the thinking or change the thinking?
And I think just to add to that, I think this is where, and this is a weak area that we find, is reporting of near misses. We're very ready to report actual incidents and things that have actually happened and people have been injured, but we're not so good at reporting near misses. But it's the near misses that gives us the opportunity to be proactive and identify, whoa, that was lucky. That could have been really bad.
Does CHIRP allow for that?
CHIRP does, but again, CHIRP is about reporting accidents and incidents in a confidential way, so that, they're not pointing the finger. But the reporting of near misses is people tend to have a mindset that says, "Oh, that was lucky. I didn't chop my finger off."
It's
but
a shaming thing in a way.
Yeah, and but if they actually took a step back and said, "Oh, I nearly chopped my finger off. I better tell somebody about this." That it may stop someone else chopping their finger off later on. But I think there is a cultural change in reporting near misses, and in the merchant world it happens a lot. But in yachting, I think the reporting in near misses is an area where we should maybe spend a good amount of time on trying to encourage that.
So yeah, I think one of the ways to do that is to make it. The culture is that if you report a near miss, you might get in trouble, and it might bring backlash towards the boat or towards the individual. And so putting it out there that that's not the case, and sort of rewarding reporting of near misses versus being scared of reporting. Something I learned recently was the MAIB. When they do an investigation, even if you're at fault, they can't use the investigation to prosecute the mariner, as long as you've told the truth. They sign an agreement with you saying, we're going to do this investigation. No matter what we find, as long as you've told us the truth, this will not be used against you. It's a very, very good way. That's one step forward.
Well, what that can tie into as well, and this is another human factors piece that a lot of us are familiar with, but not necessarily everybody, so I won't assume everybody is, it's that funnel of failure. So things happen that sometimes result in catastrophe and sometimes result in near misses, or, like you said, unreported incidences that go unreported because there was no casualty. And if you go back and do the forensics on these accidents or these potential accidents, you find out that at the beginning there's something that was missed. There was a mistake made, a failure of a piece of equipment, a shortcoming on a crew member, whatever that looks like. And in analysis, had you stopped that from going forward at that point, there had been no failure. But the farther it goes and the longer it goes, it moves down that funnel until, if you've ever seen a marble go down that type of thing, gets to the point of no return. And then that's where you are at the irreversible side of that failure. So the key is, if you report the near misses, if you have a culture that allows people to recognize these things, you start that process of stopping the failure on that funnel of failure before it gets out of control or beyond the point of no return.
Instances where a crew member might have a really important piece of evidence that we really need, And it's been disclosed. We understand that what we were told is the truth actually isn't, and we can prove it with this. We've had crew members come in and say, I'm not going to share that with you because I don't want to damage my reputation. Well, then it kind of flips a little bit, and you're like, well, your reputation may very well be damaged because you're not going to help, reveal the truth as to what really happened. So, I don't know if there's a way to change, the blame game, as you were saying, Ken, what we need to do with that. But I think people need to trust in the fact that everybody makes mistakes. Let's just try to learn from them and not repeat them, I think, is where we need to go with that.
Rick, if I just may, it really plays right into this, cruise safety or yacht safety culture survey we want to do, because we also want to have a look at the segmentation within the industry. Are there certain areas within our yacht segment which deserve more focus and attention in terms of developing a better safety culture? And we all have suspicions about privately owned, below 500 gross tons, unregulated yachts. They have a certain... we have a certain impression about them that needs to be either confirmed or dismissed. We just simply don't know. We think we know, but we
It's always been the question: how magical is it under 500 gross tons?
Exactly. So that is part also of this particular survey. We will address, sort of segment it into different segments to find out where is it we're at, and in order to make progress and to reap the benefits of low-hanging fruits, let's see what we can actually do. But I think it is an important issue as well, because we talked about procedures. I mean, well-established management companies like yourself, you have appropriate management procedures in place on board. You do the audits, you do it thoroughly. There is no blame culture. That works well. But of course, to the other side, there's also another segment of yachts within our industry, and let's be honest about it, they are there, which are quite the opposite, to put it diplomatically. And we need to reach out to them as well, in one way or another. And it's difficult for us as regulators to do so, because we can't regulate the private yachts. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, from a flag state perspective, from a forum class perspective, it's very difficult. We could do so with the underwriters, and I think
I was just going to go there.
There is something there we can do as a block. Right. To make ourselves stronger, together with the flag states, the class societies, and the underwriters, to perhaps start addressing that market as well, I think.
Well, and Pete, you and I talked about this in the context that you and I used to deal with directly, and that was class and approved rescue boat, lifeboat launching equipment, that type of thing. And that's where I joke about, boy, it gets magical under 500 gross tons, because at that point in time, life doesn't matter anymore. But it's true that you can put crap on board a boat and say it's been tested, and it's not. And then you can say it meets the standard, but it doesn't. And then once you get into a fully classed and flagged properly commercial vessel, you do meet those standards. You have to. And I've always advocated that when you look at things, whether it's windlasses or watertight doors or cranes or any of that type of equipment, there should be a given standard, and we don't regulate it all. You can hang a shingle tomorrow and build a shoddy crane and call it Golden Crane Company, and if you can sell it, they'll put it on a boat, and buyer beware. That still exists in our industry. So maybe as an industry, and I'm not just pointing to that segment, but that's the one I know best, we look at these smaller boats, and between underwriters making it almost impossible to insure if it's not done right, thank you, and an industry that comes together to say there's standards we need to meet for safety and compliance. We have the intestinal fortitude to do it, and if they can't afford these boats in the future, too bad. I just said it, didn't I?
I think the challenge, and this is where the code of practice obviously is the code, the large yacht code, the reg yacht code, or any yacht code for that matter, is there for that reason. And voluntary compliance is obviously something that we would encourage. But unfortunately, as a flag state, as Engel has alluded to, we don't have the regulatory background to compel that, so private yachts. And that's the way it is. SOLAS excludes pleasure yachts. A lot of jurisdictions, regulations exclude pleasure yachts. And when I talk about pleasure yachts, I'm not talking about pleasure yachts that engage in trade. I'm talking about purely private pleasure yachts that are used for the owner, friends and family, the owner, that type of thing. And we just don't have the regulatory framework to mandate compliance with the regulations. However, and this is, I'm going to throw this at Rob, unfortunately, the insurance companies do have, they can have an impact. And we've often had this question. I've been to a ton of seminars over the years, and one of the questions that is thrown at the insurance company is, why don't you give a premium benefit or an incentive for vessels to comply with the code, so that if you comply with the code, your premium is X. If you don't comply with the code, your premium is Y. Why? And that's something that's well within the insurance company's remit to do, because at the end of the day, they're managing risk in the same way as we are. And if we try to regulate vessels, we try and regulate when the regulations are not there, then we are, as like any government agency, you're acting in a for the lawyers among us, you're acting ultra vires. You're acting outside of your regulatory sphere, and there's repercussions for that. So, I think the way I see it is a combination of maybe the insurance companies and the regulators and the class. Even class is voluntary. Nobody has to be in class now. For us, if you're a commercial yacht, you have to be in class, and that drives you into class. You cannot operate commercially unless you're in class. So that. And that's a good tool. So similarly, I know you're going to come back at me, Rob, but please do. But I just want to get that point across. To speak to Rick's point about the unregulated side, we will, and we regulate. The vast majority of our yachts are voluntary compliant. They're not charter boats. They're there for voluntary compliance only.
Well, what percentage of the fleet, 400 gross tons, 300 gross tons, 250 gross tons, are in charter right now? That's commercial.
Very low. Very low. By comparison. Now, we're talking about bona fide third-party charter. We're not talking about bareboat.
We're not talking about
Miami.
Miami.
Story. No. We're not going there. But the vast majority of boats are not chartered.
So to just address your first point about offering a premium reduction for those yachts that do choose voluntary compliance, my retort to that is, a lot of times, if you have a yacht of that size that does not comply with class or whatever regulations, a lot of times most insurance companies will say no. So you have no premium incentive at all. The premium incentive you get is if you get an insurance underwriter that says yes, and typically that happens on those boats of that certain size when they're professionally managed and they do voluntary comply.
I think the question I was going to have is, out of 1,000 boats insured, how many major claims are you having that are a result of noncompliance? It's probably very, very little.
I would think so, yeah. I don't know.
I think that's the answer why, Peter, because it's a competitive business. The insurance company's in a competitive business. For a number of years, I've worked for a guy who's the chairman of the board of one of the major marine insurers. And even if they're not in class, most captains and crew are doing their best because it's in our own best interest. The thing about an airplane pilot is he arrives at the scene of the accident first. And so it's our own best interest to make sure that we maintain the boats safely.
Yeah, I will say also it's very much a relationship-driven business. So you may have a yacht that may not be such an attractive risk to an insurance company, but they have an overall existing relationship, and then the underwriter chooses to write that policy, and then it's a matter of managing that from that point on.
I've also seen that it's a relationship-based business between if they know the captain or the engineer.
I just wanted to raise one point to Egil, and the question is, if a boat within the fleet is not reporting on any incidents, accidents, near misses, or things like that, does that raise a red flag for you? Because we know that no boat is perfect.
It definitely does, I think. So we, openly that we push out an analysis of our fleet incidents on an every year basis, and speaking on and further on to what Peter's saying, we have had 3 years running now with the near miss campaign because we are not there yet as an industry, and I think there's a lot of particularly there is a blame culture, right, and there's a fear, and I think we need to every individual in this room has a role to play with that and push that message across. If you're reporting stuff, if you're actually reporting it the lessons can be learned. We can avoid another electrocution on board a yacht, and we can avoid that fatality. Those incidents will happen. It's just the nature of the beast, particularly within the maritime industry. But to come to your question, Barrett, yes, of course. The vessel say, yeah, but we don't have anything. No near misses has happened on board this vessel. And always the question I raise, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you, your deckhand, come to you and explain to you, yeah, I did this and this, it was really, really, really close. Why wouldn't you, as a captain, want that crew member to come and approach you so that you can learn of it, so that you can address it amongst the crew? And that springs to mind on board as well. It has to be an inclusive safety culture on board, and it has to come from shore to ship, promulgated on board, driven, but also, on every single level. We often, particularly from a safety management point of view, you have a system, it's implemented, it goes to the captain, it goes to the chief officer, chief engineer, and the senior engineers, and then it doesn't really get further down. It doesn't get down to the nitty-gritty crew members on board, the ones that are actually doing the legwork, doing all those risky tender launches and so on. And that it has to be an inclusive safety culture on board. You have to have those small toolbox talk, have an open, have a climate on board that pushes towards discussing the matters and learning from them. In Hill Robinson, we're talking about there's something called the Heinrich pyramid, and in Hill Robinson as well, we have a lot of incidents, right? Like any other yacht management, and any yacht management company says they don't have anything, they're lying. I can tell you that, all right? Or they should actually look at the safety management system on board and the reporting and the culture itself. But the pyramid should look like this, right? Should be a lot of near misses and those incidents on board. Here, Robinson, just like any other yacht management company, it's like this. It's the opposite, okay? And we have more to learn. We have a long way to go.
Well said. Really well said. So I'm going to turn this over to our esteemed audience here in a minute. And Barry, do you have something else you want to throw in here?
I just wanted to add one more thing, with reporting, and it comes from the crew that we hear often, and maybe this is for you, Captain. We're often told that I didn't have enough time. I was running around doing something and I didn't have time. How is that going to change? Busy charter yachts, not enough crew, things like that. I'm just curious, and this goes to anybody, open floor, how we're going to fix that.
Sorry, I was engaged. Time management is always going to be a problem in yachting. As a matter of fact, the ISS Captain Circle is discussing time management, crew burnout, support right now. We're working on some recommended solutions, but as of right now, all the best I can say is don't take on more than you can handle.
Coming from the top. Keep it simple, sailor. Yeah, that's a better analogy. All right, Aaron.
I was going to say, I think a lot of the management factor really rests with the captain. And so with respect to, Ken's an awesome captain. And so he's running the crew, and he's giving the crew the guidelines, and he's making the policies. And I think that there's a problem with a lot of boats. I mean, I remember just when I was working on a boat years ago, we never had any policies. Everybody was winging it. And I did this I worked on a boat for over 10 years. So, obviously we've gone forward in time and there, laws have been developed and things have happened, but I think it really rests with management companies and management on board, because people, the lower level crew, they're looking to people like Ken to tell them, like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and to have, procedures and drills, because if you don't have these kind of regular, like your inspections, you come and you check to see, like, are they complying with, plugging in weird Chinese chargers and stuff. You just have to have, like, these kind of guidelines, and you have to have these younger level or lower level younger people on board really brought into the process, and people like Ken, who's a great manager, Engel, who's also, the management companies, I think that's really the place to start, because, there's really, for the management perspective and for guidelines and things, we really need more guidelines. And so I would look to somebody like Ken, and I'm glad to hear you're working on a policy for the Captain Circle or something that you can, look at time management-wise that you can distribute to other captains. And just the things that you do, I think that's very important, because I think there are the younger crew or the lower-level crew don't have a clue of any of these policies. And private yachts is really the problem, because there aren't really any guidelines. So I don't know how we work that into the situation, because there's no ISM.
Well, this is going to be some of our homework, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Aaron, last year you had a ISS initiative to try to bring in the next generation of people. What was that called? The Talent Pledge.
Talent Pledge.
And I signed that Talent Pledge.
Yes.
So today I've got my son with me, and he's going to grab this microphone, and we're going to open this up to the floor. And put your hand up if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, and he will get you the microphone. And let's use the experts that came into the room. We'll use this microphone right there. So, yeah, sure, hold it. One more comment.
One of the things I wanted to suggest, and this is also a reach out to the flag states, and I'm sorry that I haven't told you this before. One of my other responsibilities is chairman of the Yacht Safety and Environmental Consortium. Basically, the class societies working together in order to address safety and the environment. And I think there is scope for us to work together with the renowned flags in the yacht industry to see whether we could work together, also with the other class societies, to address this issue with respect to the privately owned yachts, because we simply cannot do it on our own. We can't do it, flag state, you can't do it on your own because there's other competitors. Class can't do it on their own because there's other competitors, but we can work together to see whether we can address it. And the other point I wanted to make the audience aware of is that slowly but surely regulations are creeping into the private yacht business. As of the 1st of January 2026, if you're operating a private yacht and you want to enter the polar regions for any reason whatsoever, there is legislation being imposed as of the 1st of January 2026. So things are changing very, very slowly. If you want to know more about it, I can tell you at a different stage. But these things are actually happening, and I think we can build on this.
Yes, but I was going to say is just that, the Cayman Islands last year we introduced employment contracts for private yachts. So that's just an illustration that it can be done when there's a need or that it can be done. So we can work together. But I just want to speak to Erin's point a little bit about the the junior crew. I see it all the time when I do audits on board vessels. Often I find that the junior crew are not involved in they're not, they're not engaged with the safety culture because they're never involved in the meetings. Whenever I do an opening meeting, I involve the whole crew and I explain why I'm there. But it's surprising how many often the junior crew just haven't a clue of what we're there to do. So I think that's an important step as well, that the management team, they have to, and I'll stop somebody, varnishing, or I'll stop somebody cleaning and make sure that they've got the relevant PPE. And you'd be surprised how often I see the guy, sanding with bare feet. And it's just, it just gets me in the head, and I have to stop them. So I think we've got to send that message right down to the junior crew that this is, it's important on you. And if you report something, if you're missing PPE, if you're not given PPE, then shout.
Cool. Steel-toed shoes fall into that? So I see our first, contributor, Norma. Would you like to bring your voice to the table?
You knew you were not going to get away without hearing my voice at some point.
No, ma'am.
If we're talking about risk management, I think that we have much larger and more global issues to consider. As we represent in this room, I think, a very large proportion of the great circle of yachting, from onboard operations to business operations to communications issues that we all participate in. And we know that certainly on board, the influence of social media that creeps into the reality of all cruise quarters and are, apparently an extremely negative influence on crew behavior and morale. And as an industry, I think we all have a lot of responsibility to deal with the risk issues that are involved to our own survival as an industry, considering the reputational management issues that we all see. The biggest news that is always popular is, the negative issues, talking about specific incidents with risk management. There's certainly a huge amount of drama involved in all of that, where the reality is, just today I've been able to sit with old friends and talk about, fantastic business growth, been able to see the fact that, we are as an industry apparently still growing. If you see the type of investment that we have in interest from very large international companies. But my point of that, all of that, is that I think, and many of you have heard me express sentiments like this in the past, and that is that we need to make sure that as an industry we're out there to protect ourselves in terms of the vision that other people have of us around the world, because the power of the press might not be on paper anymore, or less on paper, but it is certainly a lot more evident than it ever was. So I think in terms of risk management, especially for the large businesses that are represented in this room, but every single person as an individual, I think that's an issue. The risk of bad reputations affecting all of us in the industry is something that I think is a topic that we are all able to participate in and help in our own way or our large way to make that.
Thank you, Norma. Real quick, when you take the microphone, please introduce yourself and speak directly into the microphone. You are being recorded so that hundreds of millions of people can hear us later.
Okay, well, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear enough. My name is
Norma. Your voice carries, Norma.
Well, yes, but it is worthwhile saying I'm a board member emeritus of the Super Yacht Society. I've been a member of the board for, well, I hate to tell you how many decades, a few. And I also serve on the board of directors of the Super Yacht Society, and I've been on the board of directors of various yachting associations throughout my many years, including the PYA and Yacht A Global and so on and so forth. All of that only to say that I try to demonstrate my own passion for keeping the yachting industry healthy and a viable place for all of us to work through the type of work I do with all of my associations. And that's why I'm so glad to see this room so full of people that are obviously engaged and interested.
Yeah, we admire your passion. Thank you.
You knew it was inevitable.
Yeah.
Captain Herbert Magny.
Settle in.
Currently freelance, amongst other things. Just to go back on a couple of things real quick. First of all, we do not have to wait for a fire or a thermal runaway. Honeywell has had a product out called the Lion Tamer. There are a couple of companies out there, Frankentech is one of them, who you can put this equipment on any boat, any area, in the lazarette. They can be put in the crew quarters. It detects the off gas way before it goes into a thermal. So the technology's here.
We're talking about lithium-ion, right, Herb?
We're specifically talking about that. This is a result of a working group. Some of us were in the last 2 years outside the ISS, because Peter, we were having a conversation on the back of a boat. What are we doing to mitigate? Well, all we can do is suppress it with water because we have nothing. And as the years went by and a lot of things came out, then we have MGN 681. Now we have direction. The technology is very easy. It's on the shelf right now. You can order it today. You don't have to have a box to capture a fire. How many people have actually personally been involved face-to-face with a LiPo battery fire, something bigger than, let's say, the 100-watt? 2 of us? Anybody else actually had a battery on fire in front of them on a boat? In a house? Okay. So it's not pretty. You've seen the pictures, it's not pretty. We can get ahead of it. The product is made by Honeywell. It is called Lion Tamer. It's available to the marine and yachting industry, along with all the rest of the things in that joint hull. Wonderful thing that all the insurance companies should be taking the advice of that joint hull from Lloyd's. Great work. Put that in the clause. Everybody can adopt it, say the least. Away from Lion. CHIRP is the confidential reporting of incidents and near misses. And CHIRP went out of their way the last couple of years to have a yachting specific. And why this isn't a flyer and a phone number in every single private or commercial yacht for the crew, if they're not getting supported by the DPA or they don't have a DPA or the captain, there it is. They have a place to go to call and report, hey, I almost stubbed my toe. They don't care how big or how little. They've done an awesome job of getting involved in the yachting sector. We can also do an awesome job of getting more people involved in that. And last but not least, how many people have ever heard of the MCA's paper called Leading for Safety? That's a shame. It's been out for over 15 years. Oh, okay. A study was done. MCA hired Arthur Little to do a study. It was an amazing study done by a big survey, a lot of people in the industry. From that, they came out with a wonderful 20-some-odd page guide that every deckhand, every stewardess, every DPA can read. It's a very simple guide to very effective, relevant leadership skills that can be practiced at every level. I highly recommend getting a copy of it. It's free to everybody, and it's got the MCA's stamp of approval. And that's enough. Next person.
Who's next? Can I just add? Absolutely. I'm going to add to that.
Absolutely. I mean, brilliant points put forward. We know some of the detection systems you've mentioned, and I've seen them in operation. Very impressive. The fact that they're able to even sense that little puff, which happens when one of the cells in the lithium-ion battery goes into fault, and thereby automatically switching off the charging or discharging of that particular battery is amazing. Word of caution, of course, I always have to say that don't only just rely on that, mainly because it is that sensitive that you are going to get more frequent alarms, which might result in your crew just ignoring it. And none of this detections nor the storage facilities have been certified or tested. I've seen them, I've been there, I've seen the testing, but none of them have been certified because there are no standards against which to test. So what I'm saying is you have to revert back to what the captain said earlier. You still have to carry out that risk assessment. Don't just rely on it. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm going to make the application by a captain of a best possible practice known to them. We wait for some certification. We don't do that on operations and navigation. We don't get those certifications. What we do is we try to hunt out the best methodology known to us for risk mitigation to prevent the loss. Because a lot of times waiting for this certification of something when every other industry under the sun has already approved is how many people ate it. And I'll ask a moment of silence for those 30-something people who died on the conception. They're dead because of LiPo batteries, no watch keeping, and those two things we can solve.
Bravo. And real quick, if it's worth saying, let's say it on the mic so it's on the record and it comes into our broadcast. Thank you. Who's next? Oh, fantastic. Let's go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to introduce myself. Tristan Contis with Eco Safeway, and we're the latest sustainability partner of the International Seakeeper Society. And I had a question for Lloyd's and the captains about how much of a percentage or a priority safe chemicals are on board from an environmental safety and liability perspective. And that's something that we're trying to educate the yachting and cruise ship industry on, that there are cutting-edge technologies that perform well, but they're still very safe for marine life, safe for crew, and just gleaning your perspective would be appreciated.
So one of the things that I would encourage you guys to do is to approach the coatings companies and get them on board with your product. There are a number of eco-safe cleaning products that have been brought to my attention, and I'll take them to the paint manufacturers and say, what do you think about that? And the best I've gotten is moderate concern. And some of them will say, actually, we won't warranty the paint if you're using this product.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
George Allen from the International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network, or ISWAN. I wanted to pick up on the CHIRP comment just to highlight that CHIRP and ISWAN are partners. We have a memorandum of understanding to data share with one another. If ISWAN receives a call to one of our helplines, Seafarer Help or Yacht Crew Help, that is clearly about a safety incident, then we will encourage that crew member to report it to CHIRP. Vice versa, if CHIRP picks up on a welfare issue within one of their reports, then they will encourage that crew member to pass to ISWAN. But really, all it does continuously highlight to both organisations is that often the physical safety issues and the personal or psychological safety issues are inextricably linked. It's often very hard to separate them completely. There's usually a personal or psychological issue behind the safety issue that's happening on board. So that needs to continue to be flagged as part of this conversation. Thank you.
Hats off to you guys. I suspect that one of the biggest problems that you have with ISWAN is determining how valid the concerns are. One of the things that I've seen, and maybe I'm an old man, but with the kids that are in the business nowadays, their feelings get hurt very easily. And we deal with that a lot. They'll think that they're being treated unfairly, when it's really just yachting. And we work sometimes extraordinary hours. Sometimes feelings do get hurt, but that's sort of a part of life. And so we have to. Sometimes as a captain, we have to draw the line and say, I'm sorry that you feel underappreciated, or that that you feel that you're being pushed too hard, but we have a job to do. We're working within our hours, and I'm sorry that you can't have your phone in your hand while you're docking the boat.
That's we have as an industry stopped hauling crew before the mast, right?
Right.
All right, we're more civilized.
Quite a few grievances that are raised when a crew member comes in and says, "Oh, the captain yelled at me." It's like, okay, well, what was the situation? How did it happen? And a lot of the time, it was because of some stupid action that was being taken on board, and it's like, dust it off, learn from that, and it was sort of deserved.
I can promise you that if you ever hear that I've yelled at somebody, they deserved it. My wife has only heard me yell at her maybe 4 or 5 times.
But that's like exactly the point. You know, a lot of the time it's like even shock seeing it, and it's like, you know, a parent grabs a kid or something like that, and it's just even like, you know, saved you some bigger mistake. And so, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, you know, it's not bad, you know, you'll move on, but now you know how not to get yelled at.
There you go. Hey, who's next in the?
I think she wants to rebut.
Oh yeah, please.
As you said, one of the biggest challenges you assume that we have is whether concerns are valid. I completely understand where you're coming from as a captain and how difficult it must be to balance that and tread that line. But at ISWAN, we absolutely do not have that problem. We treat every issue, feeling, whatever it is that crew present us with as valid, as their truth. And we really just offer a listening ear. We meet people where they are at. And, yeah, it's not an issue for us whatsoever.
Fantastic. Who's next?
Thank you. My name is Patrick Kelly. I work for Bradford Marine. I'm the Director of Safety and Environmental. I'm going to introduce myself just a little bit to kind of qualify what I'm saying. I'm a certified safety professional, so people know what I do there. Hazardous materials manager. Been doing this for 25 more years. Touching on a lot of things. Product technology. All right. There are ABD extinguishers out for lithium-ion fires that do work well. Oh, I used to be a shipboard fire instructor as well. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of fires with that. I deal with the yachts and everybody coming in the yard on a daily basis. And one thing that I've noticed, you'd mentioned time management. And one of the things that I find is the captains that embrace a safety culture, and that's their priority, those vessels do well. Safety has to be the priority. All right? You can't, I see a lot of guys, I'll put the harness on later. That's like you're going to put your seatbelt on just before the accident. It has to, priority, I mean, the one takeaway from this, it has to be priority. Right. Because there's a number, in the safety industry, we talk about all this stuff. Right. But you can't nail it down to the safety culture is the priority over everything else. We're not going to be successful.
Well, bravo on that. We're going to wrap up here in a minute, but I'm going to add on to what you just said. I started this by talking about my maritime career, and when I was working offshore, it was safety first. The amount of training we did was intensive, and one of the cool things was we did quarterly basically safety awards. So if your department came through with no casualties, sometimes it was a brand new set of coveralls, or sometimes it was a brand new buck knife, or sometimes it was something else that was of value and use and appreciated. And you were really that was a point of pride that you know. And if you got to the end of the year with a clean slate, it was a big party. So they embraced safety in the company I worked for. It was such a huge focus, and that's a takeaway that we can bring to the boats here probably as well. So we're going to take about a 15 or 20 minute break. Michael is going to come back and he's going to rock this place. So don't leave, because some of the things he's bringing to the table here in a few minutes are going to be crazy. I'm here to keep him in his lane best I can, and we'll have some fun with this as we wrap up. But Aaron, you had
another line of discussion, so I think we should not do that.
Yeah.
To drive for after the break.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So I want to stay on time here so that we don't miss the opportunity. So try to avoid the temptation. Head out into the sunshine in that boat show for a few more minutes if you would, and we'll wrap this up here shortly. Quick 15-minute break back here, and we'll do a cool wrap up. All right, welcome back, everybody. And hopefully the first session of this risk mitigation seminar was interesting. Some scenarios thrown around. I know there's a couple.
One of the things we didn't talk about, and I know I don't have a microphone, but I also know I don't need one. It doesn't have to go into the public record, but I would like to say that as an industry, there's another risk that we did not discuss, and that is the risk that we have both aboard and ashore with the quantity and quality of personnel, whether they are licensed crew, whether they are entry-level crew, whether they are people that are being recruited into the business of yachting from on board or from a more academic background. That is something that is dire. And I place crew and I place people in the business.
You know that space as well, if not better than everybody. And
I wish we had more.
Well, and here's the thing. This seminar is part one of two. The second session will happen in Monaco this year. So hopefully we'll see everybody on the other side of the pond, and we'll reconvene. And Norma will bring your thoughts and ideas in the fore as far as that goes when we go into the next session. Because
I'd be interested to know, very quickly, because I know we have a little bit extra time. How many people in the room, whether you are working on a yacht, or whether you are running a business, or whether you're looking for a job, how many people here have felt the impact of not having enough people to hire or even enough jobs to look at?
I would suggest everybody, and if you've not had that, you're probably not in that space. Just saying.
All right,
yeah.
Let's do this thing.
All right, so we're going to go. Michael is going to kind of bring his thoughts in and help us wrap this up neatly with a bow.
Right. I think I've been oversold here a little bit, but I'll do my best to make it interesting. Let me start by simply reading from a list of things that came to my mind when I was listening to this wonderful panel. And I think there's probably no better 6 people in the industry than Rob Karen to speak on insurance, for my friend Captain Ken Bracewell, who'll be inviting all of us to an open bar tonight.
In Fort Lauderdale, I have to drive.
Ingle DeBoer for class. It's all about safety. Or Peter Southgate on flag state issues, and Egil Nordstrom on management. But here's the way I filtered everything before I get to my actual notes. I thought of the woman who was told to take care of that line while underway when the tender was banging against the side of the yacht. And, of course, the line, her fingers got between the line and the tender, and she lost her fingers. That's about training, and it's also about the captain's training. You should have stopped the yacht and let the line out or gone back into the marina. Or the amateur chiropractor in a crew quarters who broke the back of his shipmate. Or the chef with very sharp knives. You don't want to fool around with a woman with a bunch of sharp knives who's the chef, because you might actually put your hand up at the wrong time, and you will lose your fingers. The gun-toting crew member who's twirling his gun in the crew mast and shot his shipmate. Or Jimmy McTeague, who, and this is on construction quality, so after the cleat came out from the boat that was being towed, the cleat came out, flew forward and nailed Jimmy in the forehead and blinded him for life. But the cleat did not have a backing plate, and none of the cleats on board that yacht had backing plates, which shows a very deficient standard of care in construction. Or the lady who was Olympic, she was actually a full scholarship swimmer at the University of Florida, who is standing in the middle of a beautifully coiled line, not perceiving that when the tender pulled the line taut, it would cut off her foot. Or the EPIRB people, when the ship Majestic Blue fell apart, and the crew member was asked, well, what happened? He said, well, Captain Hill told us to throw the EPIRB in the water, so I just tossed it in the water. He said, did he tell you the part about tying it off to the vessel that you're on? I don't remember that part. And then the skiff boat, when they were discovered in the skiff boat, 1,000 miles from Fiji, it was like, why did you take that boat as opposed to the life capsule? He said, well, because it had an engine. I said, well, you're 1,000 miles from Fiji. Yeah. So, training is important. And I think when you're young and restless and 20 years old or what have you, you have to understand you've got a task. And a good captain in this industry does a lot of the OJT, on-job training. But those are the things that kind of popped into my mind as I'm listening to these war, the stories. I'm thinking of war stories to kind of, it's something you don't talk about in the yacht world. So yacht world is a thing of beauty and everything's perfect and we try to make it perfect. But the reality is a lot of what was said today, and I'll get to the points in just a second. So I want to mention a different type of aspect because I appreciated Tristan Contis here talking about what he does, a different kind of onboard activity, which is using non-toxic chemicals and things to protect the marine environment. Because, you know, the International Seakeeper Society, this is a plug, in 1998 was built by 6 yacht owners. Some of you may not know this, but it was founded in Monaco in 1998 by 6 yacht owners. And I was there at the creation. It was a beautiful thing. And they were troubled by something called coral bleaching, and they thought they could fix it because they had fixed everything else in their life, and that's how they were fantastically wealthy. And a young man named Paul Allen gave us a check for $250,000. And without Paul Allen, God rest his soul, there would not be a Microsoft and there would not be Seakeepers. Just saying, yacht, but as a yacht guy till the day he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But Christina Lauder, the Beacon Owl Trust, who's one of our supporters, is the first woman I ever met who did non-toxic chemicals in the marine environment. She was all about that. She's Danish. She actually owned Danish yachts. Some of you may remember Shooting Star. It was a wonderful yacht. So that's our little plug for a different type of aspect of the, it may not be quote-unquote risk management for people, but I can assure you that toxic chemicals is certainly a risk for marine life, the environment, and everything about 80% of the world's biomass. And so it's a different type of risk management. We're not quite there yet on the insurance side, but anyway, speaking of insurance, what my takeaway was that Rob Karen talked about, you want to buy the right equipment, you want to buy the higher quality. These are aspirational things. And if you're owning a $25 million motor yacht or even a $10 million, why not buy the quality? I know that I bought dockage gangways and so forth from this guy and structures because never had an issue with the things he built. They were always overbuilt. They always were the most expensive items, but that I know Aaron did the same thing. We're not going to specify a second class.
We avoid the race to the bottom.
What's that?
We avoid the race to the bottom.
Exactly. So Rob, I can assure you that in Rick's former life, we always bought the best equipment and the safest equipment. I think that the risk management survey would be money well spent. If somebody is in this room that provides a risk management survey, now it could be a marine surveyor, but it could be an agent. But somebody can provide that service. I think we would certainly recommend it. It's part of what we do with the reports of survey when our clients hire marine surveyors, but it could be a little more specific, I think. On the management side, we heard the word safety culture come up time and again. There is the opposite of a safety culture, and I think you're close on talking about it. And it's basically when the deviation from norm becomes standard practice on board. It's a day-to-day thing. It becomes a culture of deviating from normal safety practices. Be very aware of that because it happens one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, over a period of time. And it's usually the captain that is in charge of keeping people on task and realizing that you're on a very dangerous, moving, large, expensive asset. It is beautiful, but it can also be dangerous, and that's why you're going to be sure that it's an ongoing, everyday, continuing education and correct practices on board. And someone talked about something which I think was wonderful. I think it was Ken that you may have mentioned it, but I think what you were saying, because it's definitely the most dangerous times in passenger safety and crew safety is getting on and off the boat. And if they don't learn how to do that properly in heavy weather and everything's moving in different directions and it's wet and so forth, you will have trouble. It's training. It is why good captains are worth their weight in gold. Time management. I wish I had an empirical study of how many accidents occur on eves of holidays. I have no knowledge. I've seen it in the case law. but people are rushing to get to the Christmas party. They're rushing to get to the New Year's party. Yachts have Christmas parties. They have New Year's parties. They have July parties. It's a party environment, but people are rushing to get this thing done, and that's when these accidents happen. They step into open holes. It's just you can imagine, whatever your imagination can take you. Time management is, I think, maybe what you were getting at. But time is not your friend. It is your enemy. So whatever the adage will help you remember that in terms of steady Eddie. Just be cool, and you're not in any rush. Docking and undocking. We all love the videos on the internet about bad docking, but speed is usually one of the major factors in that process. For those of you like me that maybe you didn't know what OEM meant. It means original equipment manufacturers. That's usually the person that really knows the product the best. I think that's what the comment there was made to. Don't go for the cheap one-off. I'll make you a good deal on this product. Just get the quality product. Engel de Boer, your comments regarding, again, safety culture, yacht crew safety and culture survey. We all look forward to getting that and taking that seriously. I like the fact that the class societies are thinking about yacht crew. I've always thought of them as worrying about equipment and not giving a damn about safety in terms of operational safety or people safety or crew safety. I've always thought of you guys as the standard when somebody says, it's in class. Okay, that's a big deal. But now it sounds like you're going to try to take that to another level, which I think will be extremely interesting. We'll wait for your yacht crew safety and culture survey. But I think it will come down to something you said. Some of these things are repetitive because the panel members were repetitive. Inadequate training. Whoever made the comment about the training, and I've interviewed a lot of seamen, it's pretty basic. It's pretty brief and pretty as about as skeletal. The world, the global flag states and so forth, they do the best they can do, and they're also a little bit competitive. But the current training that goes into getting the first seaman's certificate and then the final, the watchkeeping certificate, is, I'd have to say, I think it's pretty minimal. I remember this one particular captain, and I asked him, are you familiar with the nautical rules of the road? And Todd Lochner over there, you'll appreciate this one. He said, what road are you referring to? I said, well, you almost killed your sister. He said, it wasn't intentional. I said, dude, you are really, it's pretty bad. But I'll never forget that retort. What road? What road are you talking about? And he had no idea. The fundamental Bible of navigation. Anyway, I think near misses should be changed to almost hits.
Okay.
I'm just saying. But anyway, so having said that, the chirp thing came up. Captain Magny mentioned that, and I think I think the captains know about it, but you can report, and you should know about it. You can report without recourse and without retribution. So it's a big deal. Now, I think Peter Southgate for the flag state talked about some of the themes: proper systems, proper bills, proper even storage spaces, which seems to be where fires break out. Proper systems. It is the thing that the front end. And when you're buying a yacht or any vessel, you just have to understand. Sometimes there's a reason why it may be $1 less than the other one. I had this genius who had 18 patents. He was a brilliant man, and my thought of his comment was that, or what he wanted me to do was he wanted me to sue to make his Buick a Rolls Royce. And I basically said, look, I'm good, but I'm not that good. You bought a cheap boat. And he said, what do you mean? It's a boat. It's a beautiful boat. And I said, we'll work on it, but trust me, I don't know. You're so smart. You're the nanotechnology king of the world, but you can't figure out which boat to buy. I mean, who was your broker again? Oh, you didn't use one. Okay. Oh, that's all right. Anyway, that's a war story, but it's funny to me. And I think also I hear Peter Southgate talking inexorably toward pleasure yachts. There are people on board pleasure yachts too, and I think there are too many people they do need to be protected. There has to be I think the flag states are getting there. I think the Yeti thing is fine, but they're engaged in trade. But that's basically it. I hope I've lived up to your expectations and passed the audition.
Bravo, Michael. Bravo. Thanks. A rare opportunity to reach out and ask Michael questions or engage in this wrap up. Does anybody here have something they'd like to add to the conversation? Okay.
Get on here. Hi, I'm Carolyn. Waiting. If nobody knows me, I'm Carolyn Dobbs. I work for Northrop & Johnson. I specialize in kind of the crew crisis. But to add to the whole safety thing, and especially for everybody, I've read some advice, and if you know me, I usually have notes everywhere, but I didn't bring my calendar. But it said basically, if you think that the cost for the safety training is expensive, what is the cost when something goes bad? So that is, they always said, sell what is going to, what the problem is, and that's the problem, right? So if the owners don't want the safety, just say, well, here's the cost of the last boat or the last vessel, the last program, whatever happened, this fire, or didn't have the proper PPE, whatever that is, knowing timing, knowing having great behavior on board, that cost, I promise, is going to be like 10 times what it is for them just to pay for these extra safety trainings. And the SCCW, let's be honest, that's just for you to know how to basically stay alive if you get off the boat. Let's be honest. That's really what it is. And we do know that there needs to be more training, but it takes time. It takes everybody to agree. And at least we're getting somewhere. At least we're actually talking about it in these larger forums, which 5 years ago I don't think we would have done.
That's a good point.
When the 27 crew members in a boat fired their last flare 1,000 miles from shore in the Pacific, Ed Radigan, I mentioned his name. Some of you might even know his son, Michael Radigan, has a little product in the industry called Chafe Pro. But Ed was a captain. He does what every wonderful captain does. He heard the coordinates, but he knew there would be currents, and he knew it was 8 hours away. So he sent his best seaman to the highest point on the boat and told him, scan the coastline. And at dusk, he saw what we would later learn was the last flare. They had 6 flares. They shot 5. No one saw them. The last flare, this fellow from Indonesia, his name was Ellis Taleu. Love this guy. Smart as a whip. And the one guy that you send to the top, he goes all the way to the top, and he says, Captain, 20 degrees to starboard. For 8 hours they steam, and they picked up 27 people because the captain was like, I know what my job is here. They got no chance without me. There was no other ships in the area, no other yachts in the area, and he picked these guys up. So it's training, but yeah, can you imagine the cost of him not having training and just sort of blowing? Well, I'm 8 hours away in the Pacific. What is the chance? But that's not the way you think. You go, no, we're going to do this, and he was successful. So you can run into Ed Radigan, Scottish guy. Tell him I said hello.
Congratulations.
I didn't think I was going to be plugging anything here, but now that we're talking about operations, and sorry, Vanessa, I'll do my best here. She gave me hell earlier for not speaking into the microphone. So I have a former crew member who started out as a deckhand of mine, and he has recently started a consulting business where he does operational audits. Goes on board. He really focuses on family offices that really don't understand yachts and get thrown a yacht and have to deal with it. They hire him to kind of go out and help sort out the problems. And he's turned into doing an operational audit on the boat. Everything from construction and maintenance to safety management to training to accounting. And it's unbelievable the deficiencies he finds on these smaller boats that, the 499-ton boats are generally going to have somebody who knows what they're doing. You start getting into the 250-ton, 300-ton boats, you sometimes are picking from the middle of the batch, and having that service, I think is a benefit. And so, if anybody's interested, please reach out to me, and I'll put you guys in touch. He does a great job. I've got no skin in the game, but I'm pretty shocked at what he's found and impressed at how he's handling it.
That ties right into risk mitigation for sure.
Sure.
Proactively. Wendy.
Hi, can you hear okay?
There you go.
I'm Wendy. I'm a captain as well, 3,000 ton. I also teach STCW. And the STCW class that I teach is up in Fairfield, Connecticut, so I get a really diverse group up there. That said, my happy sweet spot was always running boats under 50 meters. I've worked on larger vessels, but what I found when I stepped on those boats was shocking. To Ken's point right there, unbelievable. I have found fire extinguishers expired 14 months ago. The dampers in the engine room seized because they've not been exercised in so long, meaning they haven't been checked. Things stored improperly, and on and on and on. So this stuff happens all the time. To the rest of the panel's points is the vessels under 500 tons, this is the future of the over 500-ton crew. If we're not starting with the basics and teaching them the very basics of understanding boats, yachting, all of it, we're all in trouble. Yes, we have to go ahead and spend the money for the safety equipment, but if they don't know how to use it or what it's for. When I teach my STCW class, I talk about communication, which is actually not part of STCW. Because I get people that have just started in the industry or just looking to be a stewardess or a deckhand. They don't know where to find a latitude and longitude. What if they're the only ones that can get on a VHF radio and do a mayday or say, I don't know where the crew is? Understand, encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to understand where a latitude and longitude would be found. And I always tell them, if you don't know where you are, just say, look, I don't know where I am. We left Fort Lauderdale. We're on our way to Newport. We left yesterday at 9 o'clock. We're going slow. Everybody in this room knows what slow means on a boat. Somewhere between 4 and 10 knots. That just increases your chances of being rescued and saved exponentially. I love the class societies when they come in and give us parameters because that does give us a guideline on smaller vessels. But we've got to find a way to make sure that it gets passed along. The captains' chats that are out there right now have 3 and 4 and 5 and 600 captains. And the vessels that they run are ranging from 70 feet to 110 meters. So the more information we can get out there to them, how do we do it? I don't know. I love the concept of the surveys. I think that's a great idea. But it has to, please don't forget about the smaller boats, because that's where I would bet the majority of your claims and liabilities are coming from.
That's right.
Well, and Wendy, I think you just stepped right into how I'd like to try to wrap up this conversation today, in that we can send people home with some homework. And, of course, we're going to have our illustrious President, Aaron, have a few words to end this. But before we go there, I think the homework that, as I'm listening to everything, and I guess I'm in the catbird seat because I've got this great panel on both sides of me and have really had this conversation multiple times leading into this day. The commercial vessels, all yachts are bringing inherent risk to the table. That's just a given. The commercial vessels over 500 gross tons, over 1,000 tons, are by and large more professionally crewed. The crews that are on these boats tend to have worked their way up through the ranks. They're dialed in. Not that they're immune from problems, but I would dare say that in an analysis, they're probably safer, better operated, more commercially configured. It is that smaller boat world, and if you spend any time in South Florida, we talk about it being the yachting capital of the world, you look at the fleet of boats we have here, most of them are unregulated, most of them are unclassed, flagged, some, standards nominal, experience nominal. Owners sometimes, again, they're chasing their way to the bottom. They're trying to cut costs everywhere they can, and probably a percentage of them ought not ever to be a yacht owner, but they have the wherewithal, so they are. So as an industry, the takeaway, the homework I think that I'd like to kind of challenge everybody with is, how do we find a way to bring some level of self-regulation into that space? It could start with insurance underwriting, Rob. It could incorporate registration somehow, some way. I'm not sure. Certainly, the crew training is important, and I don't think we give it enough focus. We have certain minimum standards, and maybe those minimum standards need to be moved up a little bit. What we're talking about will probably add some expense to the operation of a boat. But if we're saving lives, if we're saving injuries, if we're saving losses, I think there's a value there. So we should think about that, because I think the boats over 500 gross tons they're all right. I mean, they're going to be done all right. It's the small fleet, and it's the small fleet that feeds the large fleet. So I would suggest that in the space we all work in individually, think about what we can do to contribute or add to that, and let's continue this conversation and see if we can't bring the whole fleet up a little bit to a higher standard.
I just wanted to add, we talk about unregulated vessels, but just to give you an illustration to your point, Rick, we have 250 new build projects that we're supervising as we speak.
That's a lot,
and it's about 50% of the global market. Now, the good thing about that, the vast majority of those are private yachts. So the owners or the yards that are building on spec have said, okay, we're going to build these to the Reg Yacht Code regardless of the end use. And it doesn't matter whether they're going to be private, commercial. We're going to build them to a standard. You deal with the hardware, so you build the vessel as safe as you possibly can. Then if the owner comes in and says, hey, look, I just want to use the boat privately, he's got a good baseline. And then if the boat's sold later on and the new owner decides, hey, look, I want to charter this boat, then he can. Similarly, if the owner decides after a period of time that, hey, look, I don't want to charter now because I want to use the boat for my family, but after a while he wants to use it to maybe offset some of his costs, he's got that option.
Right.
But if you don't build to the code from the start, it's very difficult to retrospectively comply.
So
and I think that's, for me, it's encouraging that the vast majority of coded yachts are privately used.
Right. And again, I think circle back around to these boats that are being built well. That's great. We have to crew them. We have to put the human factor onto these boats. And so as an industry, think about what that looks like. How are we going to bring the crew up?
Can you guys hear me?
There you go.
Yachting Stockberg, yacht captain, West Coast, San Diego. Here with Northrop and Johnson today, but basically I think owner education is a big part of this. The inconvenience to the owners for the under 500 gross tons when it comes to safety is the problem, from my perspective. And
perceived inconvenience or real inconvenience?
Both, in times. I want to be there now, 5 minutes. Hey, I got my checklist, I've got my things to do. I don't care. We're going. That's a problem in that size, I feel. In the bigger size, the guys, they respect their captains a little bit more. There's more of a structure. Smaller boat, that's a huge problem. It comes with crewing the boat with the right amount of crew also. There's many factors within that. But the owner's expectations and education, I think, is a huge part. And we need to figure out how to bridge the safety between the owner, the yacht, and the crew. It's a huge thing, I think.
Don't disagree with that. Anybody else? Well, fantastic. We are about 4 minutes ahead of schedule. So, Aaron, would you like to bring your voice to the table and wrap this up neatly with us? Thank you.
I will say I'm Aaron Acker. I'm the president of the ISS. I realize I haven't introduced myself once all day. So for those of you who don't know me, anyway. And I'm also a partner at Moore & Company. So to wrap it all up, I thought one small thing people could do, of course, and as the president of ISS, I have to bring this up again, is to take the talent pledge, mentor somebody. So, for example, I mean, Michael and I laugh about this still to this day. When I went to law school for 3 years, and I graduated, and Michael's first assignment for me was to write a motion for summary judgment, and I had no idea what that was. I was just like, we had no forms, we had nothing on our server. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So imagine somebody's getting an STCW certificate. They have a piece of paper, but they have no idea what they're doing. Okay, that's the bottom line. So my advice would be or my hope for all of you would be if you could take the ISS pledge and commit to mentoring somebody on board, for example, younger than you, bring them up, try to give them a little extra attention, teach them. And so, we have little cards here. You guys can take them home with you. And that's all I'll say about that. But I just wanted to thank you all for coming today. Thank you, the audience, everybody being here. Thank you to the panel. I'd like everybody to give these guys a big round of applause. It's been a wonderful event. We're just so thrilled there's such a turnout. I wanted to thank the ISS Education Committee for all your work on this. These things aren't easy to put on. It takes a lot of time, and everybody here is just volunteering their time. So thank you again for all that, for your volunteerism. It's wonderful. Thank you to Maggie and Vanessa who, come here with all this stuff. They set it up. They work to have this all ready to go for all of us. And again, thank you to all of our sponsors. Again, I just want to thank Amoco, Hill Robinson, Moore & Co., Yachtco, Berger, and of course Rick. Thank you so much for putting this on and for agreeing to televise this and record it. And
all of the above.
To Yachting International Radio.
It's been our pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you here. This is so exciting for us. And last but not least, I'd like to just ask you all to maybe also grab a save the date card. We have our next events are coming up in Monaco. We have our cocktail reception. We have our next leadership series. We also will we don't know the date yet, but we plan on having a leadership series at the Newport show. So we hope that you can all come to that if you're in Newport in the beginning of September. I know so it might be the same time at this Cannes show. I'm not sure of the dates yet. But keep that in mind. And then, of course, for our big event, our ISS Design Awards and Design and Leadership Awards, and that's at Flips. So we hope to see you there. Take one of the cards. Take a ISS Talent Pledge card, and we look forward to seeing you. Pete wants to say something.
There is an ISS mixer tomorrow night, is there not?
Oh, of course. I've been so terrible about the West Palm Beach events. Yes. For those of you on the board, there's also our board meeting tomorrow between 3 and 5. We'll see you for that. And then we have our mixer tomorrow at 7 to 9. And that's at, I think it's at 300 Banyan Street.
That's right.
It's at the Yachtco Lounge, Sky Lounge. Yes. Thank you all for that.
I just want to mention also after the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show, we're planning on doing a crew-focused event. So an education seminar directed at crew, because obviously it's very difficult to get crew off the boats during the boat show. So we're going to do something after the boat show when hopefully the crew will still be around, but maybe not so busy as they are during the show. So just look out for that. Watch this space.
Yeah, so our education committee has really bitten off a lot this year. We're doing like 5 seminars, and we usually do 3. So big round of applause to those guys. Thank you so much.